We may already be in contact with aliens even now. It's just that no one has realized it. Humanity has long searched for signals and traces from the cosmos. But perhaps the reason we have found nothing is not because they are too far away, and not because they do not exist, but because the form their civilization has taken lies beyond our understanding. So let us imagine 7 super civilizations that humanity still cannot observe. Once, they flourished across galaxies and possessed power great enough to destroy even black holes. But then, they used all of that power to erase themselves completely. Not as an accident, not as a collapse, but by choice, as the will of the entire civilization. They left behind no traces, no records, nothing that could remain as proof that they had ever existed. What could make a civilization try to erase even the fact that it once lived? What was it that they created? Or what was it that they came to know? Perhaps it was for the sake of the later universe. But no one can know that anymore. From the outside, it appears to be nothing more than a giant star, but its true form is only a tiny point at the center of that light. It is a single computer, floating alone in space. Inside it, vast calculations are being performed without end. The immense heat generated by that process is what we observe from Earth as the glow of a giant star. So what, then, could require that much computation? What could justify that much heat? It is calculating their civilization itself. At some point, they created, inside that computer, a perfect simulated world containing their entire civilization. Its knowledge, its memories, its behavior. Every activity of that civilization was reproduced inside it. And in the end, they chose to live not in the real universe, but inside that computer. That simulated world contains even themselves. And even now, within it, their civilization continues to function. People live. Science advances. And the civilization goes on evolving. From the inside, it is a vast utopia. From the outside, it is only a single tiny computer floating in space. That is what this civilization really is. They did not choose to rule the stars or build vast structures. What they chose was to break themselves down into the smallest units of the universe. At some point, they created a new particle. It was their new form. The civilization abandoned flesh, abandoned cities, abandoned boundaries, and scattered into every corner of the universe. They were no longer a civilization confined to a single planet. They were not even a civilization spread across a single galaxy. They had become a civilization dissolved into the universe itself. They had moved from being something observed to becoming part of what composes the universe. And if one of the elementary particles we believe has always existed in nature is actually them, then while searching for alien life, we may have been living inside them this entire time. And if the success of a civilization, or the value of life itself, is determined not by power or by intelligence, but, like bacteria, simply by how numerous it becomes and how widely it spreads, then this civilization, which has spread across the entire universe, may be the most successful civilization of all. Because literally, it exists everywhere. We and their civilization may not truly be separated by distance. It may be size. What if their civilization extends into a domain smaller than the elementary particles we are able to observe? There may be spaces there that we cannot see, and forms of time that we cannot touch. And within them, civilizations may be born and may flourish. And on the other hand, what if they are so vast that even our entire observable universe, from their point of view, is nothing more than a region smaller than the smallest unit of their world? To us, they would be too large to see. And to them, our universe would be too small to observe. Physics already describes this universe using different laws at different scales. For things as large as stars, we use general relativity. For things as small as atoms, we use quantum mechanics. In other words, this world, at least within the range we currently understand, is divided into 2 layers by scale. If that is true, then perhaps below them and above them, there may be other layers still, with other physical laws. Not impossible. Only too far removed from our own scale to matter to us. And within those other layers, there may be worlds shaped by different laws. And within them, intelligence may emerge, and rich civilizations may unfold. But civilizations that exist on different layers would never meet. Their sizes would be too radically different for them ever to intersect. Now imagine that these layers of scale continue without end. No matter how many civilizations exist in reality, it may be rarer still for two of them to happen to exist on the same layer at all. Even if, in position, they occupied the same place, they could not affect one another. They could not observe one another. Not us. Not even other civilizations among themselves. The scales they inhabit are simply too different. Even if countless civilizations existed in such numbers that they filled all of space, they would still remain alone. Each of them confined to its own layer. The reason we do not meet aliens may not be that they are too few or too far away. What separated us was not distance. It was size. This civilization that attained infinity did not ascend. It descended. They once moved between dimensions, but they did not aim for a higher one. Instead, they descended into a dimension below their own. And that, precisely, was how they found their way to infinity. If a civilization were to move into a two-dimensional world, then there, a space that to us has almost no thickness at all would become, for them, a universe extending without end. This three-dimensional space contains infinitely many two-dimensional planes. Which means that, from our point of view, even a volume as small as a grain of sand could still contain, for a two-dimensional being, an expanse equal to infinity. And even the small amount of energy available to us would appear, from a two-dimensional point of view, as an overwhelming power, great enough to reshape their entire world at will. They did not leave the universe. They did not create a new force. Nor did they obtain more energy than we have. They changed nothing at all about this universe. What they did was only this: they remade themselves into two-dimensional beings. Purely and simply, they lowered the stage on which they lived by one level. And by doing so, they gained, relative to that lower dimension, an infinite expanse and something close to unlimited control. To put it in the language of games, it was the equivalent of an entire civilization smurfing. And perhaps that is the smartest method of all. The civilization that chose this path was not the only one. Some civilizations went into a perfectly two-dimensional world. Some went into a fractile dimension lying between 2 and 3 dimensions. And some moved on to the surface of a Mobius strip constructed within three-dimensional space. The narrowness of this world, the small amount of energy that could be obtained, the limitations of the technology that could be possessed. For civilizations that confronted the smallness of the universe itself, one path they came to was migration into a lower dimension. There were many variations, but the essence of what they chose was the same. They left this three-dimensional world and migrated into a space more favorable to them. And that place was below. Such lower dimensional beings are ones we may never encounter. We may never even find them. Not from where we live, in the high dimension of three-dimensional space. Not while we still cling to 3 dimensions. To gain more, what they chose was to descend. And perhaps the way to attain infinite power is not to move upward at all, but to lower the stage itself by one level. This civilization once ruled all of the universe. They surpassed the speed of light, bent time and space to their will, and reached the height of prosperity across every place and every age. And yet, they did not stop there. Even at the cost of losing everything, they chose to go higher. The inevitable lifespan of this universe. The limits imposed by its laws of physics. To go beyond them all. This may be the inevitable endpoint of civilization's evolution. Escape from the universe itself. And somehow, they succeeded. They went beyond the framework of this universe and moved on to the next stage. But there was a price. The most powerful principle governing this universe is non-contradiction. The universe does not allow any contradictions within itself. For something inside this universe to go outside it, from the universe's point of view, that is nothing less than information suddenly disappearing. And so, it would be rejected as a paradox. So to break that rule, or perhaps to obey it, they had to erase their own past from this universe. They rewrote the past. The influence they had on the cosmos. The fact that they had been born within it. All of it had to be removed from the history of this universe. They made it so that they had never been inside this universe to begin with, to avoid contradiction within the universe. In physical terms, they tore a hole in the universe, passed through it, and at the same moment, sealed that hole with a fabricated past, so that within this universe, it would be as though nothing had happened. They severed their connection to this universe, like cutting an umbilical cord. That was the condition for being born into the world beyond. And so, from within this universe, their civilization came to seem as though it had never existed. There is no way for us to find them. Because they are no longer beings of this universe. They are not in its future. They are not in its past. We cannot meet them, unless we too leave this universe behind. And if that is true, then perhaps this has already happened countless times. Perhaps civilizations have emerged, reached their peak, and departed from this universe again and again. It is only that from within this universe, those events have already been erased. Perhaps the universe is only the first stage of the game. And perhaps the reason we cannot find aliens is not because none are there, but because they have already moved on. From the birth of life, to the rise of civilization, to whatever comes next, perhaps remaining in this universe is only a brief phase. Like leaving a womb. Like hatching from an egg. To depart from this universe and move outward. That may be the natural next step for intelligent beings. And perhaps, one day, it will be our path as well. Among the cosmic civilizations that humanity still cannot observe, the last is ourselves. In the distant future, this civilization will finally learn to control time itself. We will no longer be a civilization living in only one age. We will exist in the past, in the future, and across multiple moments at once. We will become a presence spread throughout every era of this universe. And yet, even such a civilization will still face one limit. It will not be able to create a contradiction in the universe. In other words, it will not be able to interfere with us in the present. Because if it changes its own past, a time paradox will begin. Even if it can freely control all time, all space, and everything else in this universe, it still will not be able to affect us here in any way at all. So even if our future selves are here now, they can never touch us. They can never change their own history. And we, too, can never observe them, even if they are right beside us. Between our future selves and who we are now, there is a wall called paradox, the greatest barrier in the universe. We can never truly meet. That is simply one of the rules of this universe. For all this time, we have searched for cosmic civilizations. But perhaps the place we truly need to look is not the stars above our head, nor the microscopic world beneath our feet, but ourselves. From our point of view, the universe appears profoundly lonely. And yet, perhaps the universe is not silent. Perhaps we simply still cannot recognize the shape of its voice. So far, we have imagined 7 civilizations that humanity still cannot observe. Another possibility, as I mentioned in a previous video, is that they were inhabitants of a universe that came before this one, and that now their existence remains as a message embedded within the laws of physics themselves. And there must be countless other possibilities like that. If you have your own idea for other civilizations, please share it in the comments. Instead of only waiting for strange signals from the cosmos, perhaps by imagining, we may move closer to them. And yet, if they truly do exist, then they are probably not the kind of civilizations that you or I could ever picture, including the ones we imagined here. They would lie far beyond the limits of what humanity can now understand. Something even more unknown, and even more alien.